All right.
Yeah,
Shot of digital
Wednesday.
health.
You
It's our
know, some
usual. Go
some
ahead.
some no, somebody asked me today, like, are you actually doing like shots or are you drinking on this shot of digital health therapy? And I realized I think I've taken maybe one or two.
Right.
Like that's it with for Jacob's birthday, right? And
Right.
then maybe one other one. So
Yeah, there was some, I think maybe John Brownlee or something. I remember seeing a shot glass. I haven't partaked.
I
Um,
brought a shot glass. So are we? Let's do the. I don't know. Like today is like Wednesday, but this week's been long as hell. And actually, believe
yeah.
it or not, I don't think I have any actual calls today. I mean, there's a lot of shit to do, but so I'm gonna go grab my cognac and a shot.
Okay.
Let's see what you got there, if anything.
Okay. I've got myself a nice Sam Adams, and I think
Nice.
also we're going to talk about. I think when we're going to get guests on here, we've been.
We are, but before we get guests, I know we caught up very, very briefly. How the hell are your ribs doing? Yeah, that was like and
Yeah,
see any black eye and good.
yeah, so I elegantly, at my young, tender age, took a header. I've been biking. I've been probably biking like probably an hour, like during this whole situation. I've been biking probably an hour and a half a day. I've been biking to the going swimming. I've been biking to the office. So I traded planes for bikes, and I managed to jam my bike into a big ditch the other day and took a header off of it. Looks like I've kind of fractured a rib. I haven't done a full scan yet. So
Oh,
I had a nice black eye and a broken rib as I walk into my latest investment round, but I'm healing pretty quickly right now.
hey, listen, at least you have an excuse now, especially going into the investment round. Speaking of Charles from Freenome, I got a LinkedIn message, and then
Okay.
he sent me. So Freenome, they just raised 260 million
Whoa,
for
whoa, whoa,
cancer
whoa.
diagnostics. So Charles Roberts, one of the co-founders, I think also chief commercial officer.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so I don't think you're raising 260 million, but cheers to all the awesome entrepreneurs that are,
That's unbelievable.
raising, but also doing shit to get this done. And
Yeah.
by the way, our numbers, I know everybody waits for the numbers. We're at like, I don't know, 115, 116 followers, something like that, subscribers. So we're
Rocking it.
getting there,
This is
rocking it.
like this is like venture capital style day month week over week growth. We're heading into a Series B.
Yeah, let's see what happens to that. But speaking of investors, so our next awesome guest, I think I've known him for now a decade or so, Steve Seuntjens. So he's a partner at PHS Capital, a longstanding friend of ours, and also
Yeah.
HealthXL, which, by the way, next week, Marty and team at HealthXL are having something. Glen Tullman, I saw, Lisa is on it, Bill
Right.
Taranto, some interactive. I don't know. Maybe you know more. I actually don't, to be honest.
Yeah. So we've got so next week they have their, I think it's called HealthXL Interactive, and they've got a huge, like you said, like the Livongo, Lisa Suennen, Bill Taranto, two of which have been on our show.
That's right.
They've got a big agenda. They're doing interactive lunches, and I know Steve's going to come on in a minute, but they've sent all the guests kind of like a little gift package, so we can wear. I think, what do we got here? I got it over here.
I'm
In the
still
gift
waiting for
package
mine. What the hell?
is a pint of
Uh-huh.
Guinness,
Uh-huh.
a little glass that I've unwrapped here, and they've got I think they've given everyone a special kind of mask. So I don't know if I'm not supposed to tell anyone this, but for anyone.
Well, it's out there, so it's right around the corner. So with that, so Steve Seuntjens, partner at PHS, looking forward
Great
to,
guy.
and let me admit him in.
And Steve is calling us from the US.
No. He's in wonderful Belgium.
Belgium.
Let's see, Belgium.
That's fantastic.
Which you need to check in on the Belgian. Steve,
Hey, Stevie
Hey,
boy.
gentlemen. Hello.
How are you, man?
How are you?
you dressed up for us.
Hey, I was told this is prime time, so I dressed up for you, both you gentlemen.
I thought you went to bed like that and you woke up like that. Like you're kind of
Well,
the kind of investor that wakes up fully pressed.
sure. Well, I'm just in this routine now, and it's a constant routine. So every day is the same. You wear the same shirt. You go to bed. You get up. You sit in front of the Zoom.
Right.
Wait, and don't forget about the push-ups. Actually, the three of us were doing them, 25 for 25.
That's right.
The crazy in me kind of said, why don't we just all do the 30 for 30 now, or 30 push-ups? Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
The Guinness is
For
here.
my good friend that's sitting in Ireland, I pulled the Guinness out.
Nice. Yeah, Martin Kelly was hoping you would do that.
But I realized, I don't know if you know this, but we just talked about Jim broke his ribs, so I'm not going to make us do 30 push-ups. So he's recovering.
Nor will I tell any jokes, because that sounds a bit painful to me. Wow, Jim.
Yeah, keep them limited.
I think it was a couple years ago was the ankle, right? Now the ribs. What's going on? Was it basketball again?
It's called entrepreneur fragility.
Okay. I think it doesn't only apply to entrepreneurs. It might even move into the investment world at different points.
Yeah. No, it was funny because I think I broke my ankle my last investment round, and then I broke it. I went over the top of my bike, so I was playing basketball with 17-year-olds, and I was just going for a bike ride. Just had a bad, unlucky accident. So, but right back at it, prop myself up. It's like Weekend at Bernie's.
Ooh. Yeah, but ribs, those are tender. A bruise or a break, it's both are.
But you're like, I heard like actually in soccer playing, like it's quite common for people to get kind of a hit with like a ribs or in a lot of injuries, because you're a competitive soccer player or were or was.
Well, I was at one point in my career. I was, but that was a while ago. Now I played.
Now you're a biker as well, right?
Yeah. Now I cycle. That's
okay.
But that also brings injuries, I understand as well. So you're always prone. That's the aspect.
So first, let's check in. I know, Jim, I'm stealing your thunder on that question,
sure.
But you're in Belgium. What's happening on the ground? This is our the situation, as we're not supposed to say these words, but the situation check-in in Belgium.
Well, they are being more cautious now because it started to spike again, the situation, as you call it. And in Belgium, there is the mandatory distancing, and if you can't keep the distancing, it's face masks, and most all people are wearing face masks in the larger cities, not out in the woods, but in the larger cities and stores. You go into a restaurant, you wear the face mask till you sit down. And with schools, they are going to start. It's being announced late. Schools will start, but they're starting a bit later, is what I understand.
I mean, we had heard that they were upset with the 6 feet of social distance because usually they like to keep it to 8 feet.
Exactly. Well, Belgium. Now that's the strange thing. I mean, I'm only 15 minutes from the Dutch border, and maximum. And in the Netherlands, it's entirely different. So no face masks. And if you just go across the border, it's which rules am I following now?
Right.
So
Craziness.
So give us a little so we get the belt. So give us, so Steve, you've known Steve for a decade. I've known you for the guts of, I say we're six years into our digital health relationship here.
I think at least probably whenever you started HealthXL, I think that's when we first met. So
yeah, I'd say so. And so I always think of you as you were super aggressive, super early, I know, but going into digital health, forming, PHS, going at it, but give us maybe just give us for our 150 YouTube listeners, give us the little Steve
Hey man,
Seuntjens
it's
thesis.
hundreds. Those are the ones that just subscribe. That doesn't mean that we, come on.
Listen, yes, it goes beyond. So you want the why in
the quick PHS thesis
it really was spawned out of getting the thought of individual engagement in health. It has been growing on that basis, and the whole thesis essentially has been around population health management. Really, if you engage and you're able to as many people to reach, then you're able to drive better outcomes. And there can be a much deeper story around all that, but it's really about individual centricity on health. And it doesn't, in propositions from that can be lighter or go deeper. In deeper health is what I mean, in really bringing people, with data deeper into the system, the health system on that basis. So, and really the evolution, we call it digital health. I think when HealthXL started and we were starting out investing, there wasn't digital health at that time as a term. So
right.
it
was Health 2.0. That's actually, I think, where a lot of us met originally before even Marty started. This was, I think, in Berlin. I met Marty, I met Vishal at the Health 2.0 then. So I don't know if you guys were there or not, but.
Yeah, the whole thing was, Health 2.0, new health, individual health, consumer health. But the term digital wasn't thrown in yet at that point in time. And
kind of health tech or something. Yeah.
Yeah. now what? Anyway, please, Jim.
It's good. It's good hashtags
later.
For our post, by the way. All of this, all of these are great hashtags for our posts.
Yeah, a trillion. Like, how much has been $1 trillion later? Now it's a thing. But so give us a company that you would have seen in 2012 that you would have invested in, like whether it was through HealthXL and your participation. What's the difference between a company you see then and a digital health company that you're looking at now? What's the biggest?
Well, I think there's more definition around where they're going. So things have moved into more definition around the proposition and what it means from the start. The aspect, and also what type of business models potentially it may go after now are becoming more clear, because as we're moving forward, geography by geography, you can look at health. I like to call it health, not healthcare, but it's moving towards more of a marketplace. And cheers.
To health,
L'chaim. To L'chaim, and cheers. So it's moving more to a marketplace, and that opens up multiple business models. And I think we've seen some of those. The other factor is there's been IPOs and some trade sales. So some successful companies out there, which business models have shown themselves in working. So I think that's quite a shift from where we were, right. 8 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever you want to call it.
And how many what are we talking now, in terms of IPOs and in decent sized trade sales? Are we is it sub 50 of material value, or is it 100? Is it?
Yeah, I would say sub 50.
Sub 50.
I'm not tracking perfectly on that data, Jim, so don't quote me on that. I know you have me live, but don't
we don't have to quote you.
Unquoted.
You just quoted yourself, man.
No, I unquoted it.
The beautiful part of this is, and literally, actually, I'm impressed. It takes Steve for us to actually continuously drink through this shot of digital health. So,
right, I haven't drank. I'm trying to I'm on ibuprofen here.
No mixing for you, huh?
So, Steve, you started PHS, and I think this is roughly when we met, actually, Health 2.0, Amsterdam, right, that whole thing. But prior, you were also early on with kind of the thesis, I'll call it the health consumerism thesis at Philips. Contrast, and you don't have to get into the details. You can subconsciously do it through my book that I'm writing. But you put on your old corporate hat and the early thesis of this consumerism. Like, can you contrast of being in your own fund and like for our listeners? Just I know this is
You
a
mean
long
the
time ago,
difference between corporate investing versus
yeah.
individual fund investing? I think from a corporate perspective, you get into deeper silos of how it really fits into existing business streams versus more of the disruptive, open type of investment. I don't want to characterize that across all corporates, but I think generally corporates say, what's our business unit strategy, and then what can attach on to what we have versus it might be something very new and different and a whole new business unit, or it may disrupt the existing business unit. And these are, I think, some of the, subtle or not so subtle differences, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you've been very much of a proponent, and it's interesting you said, health, not healthcare. To me, I actually separate, and I know Matthew Holt also likes to write the two words separate. Healthcare, and I look at it and, or, and, the health consumerism, and I'll bring you back, as you said, it's health consumerism, but then at the population health. And to me, that's a little bit of a dichotomy, right? Because you can manage the population, but the solutions were all individuals. So where's your head? Because yes, there's population and the population's health as a whole, but the approaches you take are very individualized in theory. So I'm curious on how you think about this dichotomy of population versus individual.
I think,
or not.
Well, I mean, we're all individuals, but across individuals, if you take skin cancer, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, depending on where you are in the world, will get skin cancer. So that is a population in and of itself that has potential issues, and your predisposition or the aspect of potential disease, the ability to understand that is there today. And these are the types of things that can be monitored in populations through digital solutions, in which bring much faster and better outcomes because you're able to triage it into the health systems more effectively, where people can then be served. And those that don't need care aren't taking up the valuable time. So that's more effective triage.
In the data, and you look at that data, so I know, of your public, what are your investments that are public? We obviously have meditation and skincare, SkinVision.
Yeah, well, there was meditation. It was beyond meditation. It was mental health. It was Pacifica, now Sanvello, that was acquired by United Health. And that was very individual.
I still bust the chops on the rename, by the way. It just doesn't flow off the tongue. But hey, it is what it is.
I had no vote in that.
I know.
It was beyond me. But
Dale
I think
got a lot of shit from me on that one. But same thing. I don't know. Yeah.
But I mean, Pacifica, you look at really the ability to reach the mental health population, offer a solution. And more than just, it was a digital therapeutic with CBT, organically growing to 3 million individuals very rapidly.
Wow.
And moving into universities and so on and so forth. That's something, if you look at mental health itself, how many people are unknown to the health system? Quite a few. And, the ability to reach out to these people and offer something is critically important. So yeah, you mentioned that's Pacifica, but it's no longer in the portfolio. We have SkinVision. I think both of you are highly familiar with that.
But our listeners and viewers probably not. So
no,
we are.
Maybe not. Well, SkinVision is.
Let's see if you can do a 30-second pitch on their behalf.
Oh, yeah? I'll count out loud. 1, 2.
Well, their mission. 1, 2. Quick. Don't count quick. Count slow. No. Their mission is to save 250,000 lives in the next decade. And really that, aspect is bringing awareness and early detection around skin cancer. And they cover from AK, BCC, SCC, and melanoma. Let's call it 80% of the skin cancers. And through your smartphone, no attachments, you have very high clinically proven, we call it more of an assessment. It's not a diagnosis. We always advise or urge people, if you're still concerned, get in and see the doctor. And if it's red, we push people to make the appointment. So you get a red or green rating in 30 seconds that tells you if there's a potential issue with a lesion, skin lesion. And yeah, they're seeing both good individual traction as well as pickup through different payers in the Netherlands, Germany at this time, also starting in the UK, and they have been in Australia and New Zealand for a while now. So
have they tried this? Have they tried this NHSX aspect in the UK? We just
well, they're in
approved for that.
They've been in the incubator, the NHS incubator, and their digital, the digital accelerator. So they've been part of that. I think that happened 18 or 24 months ago. So yeah, it's being adapted or accepted in the UK. And
so I have a bunch of questions. So the SkinVision.
Jim's getting serious on me, Eugene.
And this is the guy who just took an ibuprofen, had a half a beer, and broken ribs, right? So
that's what someone. I was on the phone doing my virtual consultation, and he was like, "He's either you're, so the biggest things we're concerned about if you hurt your ribs is shortness of breath, but based on the speed that you're talking, we're not that concerned with you, Jim." Or you have like superhuman capacity to keep talking with 50% lung capacity.
Through the pain.
I'm like, it may be that way. But okay, so let's talk like SkinVision during the situation that we're in, right? Mm-hmm. And meditation, just quick, so do you have any data to say, are people meditating the shit out of themselves right now? And are they checking for skin lesions during the scenario? Is that being affected? Because if I'm worried about a respiratory condition, do I stop looking at that? Or do I look at it more because I'm, more concerned? Yeah,
I mean, in both cases, there's an increase in usage by individuals. I mean, the aspect of, first of all, if you can go to see your doctor, does the individual say, I want to go see the doctor? There's the fear of, I think it's called the situation, right? You called it, Eugene?
We called it the situation because we're not allowed. Otherwise, Jim has the little,
ding, ding. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Due to the situation, I think in the individual's mind, even if they can see the doctor, the first question is that where I want to go? And so is there something I can do prior to doing that? Now, the other side of the coin, if you take SkinVision, it doesn't mean not being seen by a doctor, because you can share, the result. You have an assessment that tells you what it is, but you can also share the photo, and that photo can be looked at by a dermatologist. So you're not forgoing the doctor, let's say.
But you're seeing a spike, though. You're seeing a spike in both use of the skincare and meditation. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going on to question 2 then. So question 2 is so we've asked. So when we had Bill Taranto on the thing, and we talked about the challenge, like, so we've had this great cadre of Americans, that have lived a life in Europe, of which Eugene is one of them, or he's trying to become one of them again. To Spain, and you've done that, like me. Like I've lived in Dublin, you've lived in Belgium and Netherlands. Yes. We had Sarah on. Who do we have? We had Francesca. Who else do we have? And then I think every American secretly wants to live in Europe for a while. Bill with the right deal would move to Europe.
Sure.
Who else?
We have a good lifestyle, don't we?
Lisa
Garber, totally. He'd get out a razor, shave his beard, and come to Europe.
Well, we have a nice lifestyle, don't we, Jim?
It's a nice lifestyle. It's different, right? Like it's different. Yeah. It's different. But okay. So, but we like this issue with taking companies in Europe and scaling them to America. Like, what's your, are you seeing, like, what's your strategy with that? Like Sarah Fisher had her strategy. What's your strategy for, do you prove it in Belgium and then go to Netherlands? Or do you prove it in Belgium, go to the UK? Or do you prove it in Belgium and go to America?
Well, right. It depends on the proposition. So, and why I say that is it gets into regulatory. So what is the pathway for FDA approval, if it needs FDA, and what does that mean? And how much evidence do you need to build around it, and the proposition? So for me, it's wherever in Europe you can get an initial, let's call it data, trust, for, science. Let's leave it around that, and then use usage up around it. And then, maybe it's Germany, because that's one of the larger markets, obviously, or the largest in Europe, and or right into the US. But that's how I would look at it. And then you would ask the question, how into the US? And, I think some of it can be, again, based on the proposition. It could be, well, relationships. Is it something payers will pick up, or is it something that has to be built alongside the health system, or is it direct to individuals? What does this mean? It never hurts to syndicate with the right U.S. investor in this, if it works, if it works out that way. But that's how I would look at it a bit from that angle. Now, I mean, Pacifica was a U.S. investment, so ironically, in that case, they actually started in Europe with, in France and Spain, which is where they got their initial pickup. And then it hit in the US. And then I think the mix was 70-30 at the end, 70 US, 30% still.
What do you think,
outside
Eugene? Eugene, when you have a small company going at it, like, what is random in terms of geography selection? Like, say the US is always obvious. Like, how much is random and how much is strategic?
I honestly think you need to have a target in play. It also depends on, if you're going direct to consumer, you're experimenting, right? And this is actually the interesting part about the Pacifica story. I actually didn't know that initially they got a pickup, right, on in Europe. I think when you do B2B, that needs to be pretty strategic and why, and play into the existing health and care ecosystem, right? Like, I'll use your coach as the example. I mean, while we're not limiting where the coaches join from, I mean, we have coaches from like Bahrain and Mongolia, right? And these are certified coaches. But we're not focusing on that because there are CPT codes coming. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics in the US market that have to focus, and we're US focused company. Who knows where the randomness and serendipity will take us, but we're executing on what our hypothesis is now. Right?
But don't you think, though, like, just pulling that back, like, that's nice when you're in a pitch and you're talking about every decision that an entrepreneur make is super strategic and whatever it is, but like, how much of it is, you went to a HealthXL event, you meet the right players, you have a relationship, you have a language, you have a founder that has a certain connection.
Dude, we're talking here, the three of us, because of serendipity. Now, I'm a big believer there's science behind that serendipity, and you can't ignore it, right? I don't know what it is, but there's science behind this crazy serendipity. I mean, just, I won't mention the names, but like we just closed officially off our round, right? The seed round. It's been, long term time coming. But one of the last investors in was absolute complete serendipity. It's somebody who I was on, I was going to go to a certain city for a conference. I decided initially not to, then I decided to go. We ended up on the same panel. I saw a post by their last investment. What are my odds of being on LinkedIn at that moment where that particular post would go through? So I know this was a long way, but I'm a big believer in serendipity, but you have to put a stake in the ground, right? Like,
well, I think you have overarching strategy, and then there is the opportunism and timing and serendipity that comes in.
I call it this. I call it this the McGuffin. Have you heard this before, the McGuffin?
No, please, Jim, enlighten me.
This is the McGuffin. So this is what, if I'm coaching young entrepreneurs, that don't break bones as easy as I do, is I say that everyone needs a McGuffin. And the McGuffin is the character in the Alfred Hitchcock novel that the whole story is built around at the beginning, that it's so clear that they committed the murder. And so at the beginning of it, you have this character that had the motive, had the benefit, had the motive, was in the right place, didn't have a good alibi. And it's quite clear that that person committed the murder. And then the narrative trick that Alfred Hitchcock uses is that as the story develops, that character is slowly removed from the story. But the character development all happens around that. And so everyone learns about the character, gets drawn into the story, and they get excited about the opportunity to have this person be, and so with entrepreneurism is the same way. You need the McGuffin. So you need the pursuit that we know it's obvious, what you're going to be chasing. But as you go about that, whether that is the fact what you chase or what you don't chase, comes in. So everyone always needs the McGuffin, which is, in my opinion, the explicit plan that the investors can buy into as to why you'll succeed. I'll bring it to point A. From point A, we go to point B, we go to point C. And the world just isn't made up that way. Never happens that way.
Is this the first time anybody in the world have heard the startup McGuffin? Like, is this now officially coined by Jim Joyce, or?
It's the first podcast. It's the first podcast that's the McGuffin.
Now that is quoted. That's recorded. So
yes, it's out there.
We have it down.
Because I think investors invest on explicitness, right? They need a clear, fairly linear path to success. And without that, people can't rally and support you, whether it's team members or investors or whatever it is.
I think it depends on the investors.
Yeah, I agree with that statement a bit. I think that what is most important is there a problem, and does this solution solve that problem? And then, is that market large enough to allow enough room to find a way? That's really number one in a big way, especially, the later you get, of course, it gets more refined.
Sure.
But at the very start, as you were saying, but there's also those investors, and I think it comes from the mandate of what the LPs coming in, what's their risk appetite. So are we going after the real big disruptive ones? Or are we looking at things closer to home where we can actually see the horizon? We may not be at the horizon, but we could see the horizon. And then you get into a bit more definition.
And then Steve, so what changes now? Like, so when you think about this, like what changes now with these big exits? We obviously if you're doing a digital health podcast, you always mention Teladoc and Livongo or Health Catalyst. So now that we actually have some exit. So it was like, I felt like when we were going after investment before, it was like, well, if there were only exits in the digital health space, we could invest with more confidence. But, I'm going to stay in a technology that I can understand, or in a healthcare segment that has more, kind of consistent, exit analogs I can use. So now that we have these exits, what changes?
Well, for one, it's real. This is no longer, it's
horizon.
We've hit it. So
it's accelerating.
It's happening. It's accelerating. It's happened. We're still in the very early innings, as I see, of this whole thing. But that's I think one of the biggest aspects that comes into play on the basis.
But do they just change the goalpost now? It's like, okay, we were waiting for exits. Now we have the exits. Yeah. Well, but you're not like that exit.
But the other thing that comes into play is it sets, instead of guessing what a valuation may be, right. I'm not saying everything is the same, but it starts setting some different expectations out there on, what are we talking about here? And that starts bringing more money and bigger money, because it shows a certain predictability. It doesn't mean it's all going to happen, of course, but you start getting into, well, it's real. Okay, we've got some exits. Wow, we know what some valuations might be about.
Right.
And then that starts, let's call it a bigger or more stable flow of money
And also some transparency. I mean, I can't say that I read the S1s inside and out, and there's, you know, better people that are doing this, like Exits and Outcomes, right? Mr. Doolin, Brian. I think it brought some transparency into the numbers, and we always talked, you know, in the private markets, valuations, but not value. Yeah. And so I think by these S1s coming out, you're seeing some level of what's the mapping of valuation to some realities, like how many patients, right, are being serviced, right, and things like that. So to me, that's actually the other interesting part. Wow, we're really cranking on the time. You know, one other thing, just this morning, I participated on the other side being in the podcast, and somebody asked me a very similar question. And my comment is, like, I liked your comment, Jim, on the moving the goalpost. And the question was a little bit like, hey, you know, is the innovation stopped? And my comment is, I think a lot of these, I mean, we'll see the, you know, the MWell, right? I mean, the Google deal, 100 million into MWell, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
We're going to see some consolidation, I think, and also I can see some of these DTX solutions and, and many others that have been sort of siloed away merging in. But my comment this morning was the innovation doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped in hundreds of years, right? As human beings, we're always innovating. And so, like, I don't think we should say, oh, we cannot come up with shit because Teladoc will own it, right? Or can come up with it.
Nonsense.
No, I completely agree. I think you have to ask yourself just how many, even with the situation, how many people are on Teladoc today, on telemedicine yet. It still has not reached full penetration.
It's tiny. Yeah.
So
it's tiny. You know, and how much has happened? Yeah, 100%. I think that's a positive note. Eugene?
Anyway, yeah, it's very positive note. I love it. I'm going to pour just a little bit because
we'll cheers our way out of here.
It's been a tough day.
Tough day. Cheers, people.
Am I the only
Stephen.
True Irish person here today? Then I see Sam Adams, which is U.S. or Boston, actually. You're
so. When was so Steve? How many countries have we been together? How many we've been?
Oh wow! I don't think they're countable, are they, Jim?
They're not.
Recountable anyway.
On that note, gentlemen, it was an honor, it was a pleasure. And for our viewers and listeners, hit that subscribe button. We keep going after that big goal of 1,000 subscribers, followers, whatever. And
thanks.
Have a good rest of the week, all.
Hey,
thanks, Steve.
Fun talking to you guys.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.